Hi everyone, this is Jim Renacci in the Buckeye War Room. Today we have a great guest in Bob Frantz. Bob Frantz is a conservative media personality in Cleveland. If you don't know Bob Frantz, you are not paying attention to the radio. He is a 26-year talk radio veteran who currently hosts Always Right Radio on WHK AM 1420 and has hosted highly rated shows in some of the biggest markets in the nation. He brought his show to WHK in January of 2015 with the goal of connecting with the silent majority of conservative-minded people in Northeast Ohio, providing them with a voice and a forum that was sorely lacking. In addition, Bob is a regular guest host on the nationally syndicated programs of Dennis Prager, Hugh Hewitt, and Dr. Sebastian Gorkin on the Salem Radio Network. I want to invite Bob on to talk about a couple topics here in Ohio. So welcome, Bob.
Always a pleasure to talk to you, Jim. Thanks very much for the time.
Well, thanks for being on. Bob, I wrote a op-ed that has now been circulating on our closed primaries. Now, you and I have talked about it. It's amazing that people, especially Republicans, don't seem to be that concerned about it, even though we know party switchers, as I call them, should not be allowed to sabotage primaries. We know they are sabotaging primaries. We know there are a couple 100,000 voters that have crossed over on a regular basis in 2022 and 2024, and it has changed election results. Love to hear what your thoughts are and what you think in regards to what goes on in Ohio.
Well, it's very frustrating, I think, as a Republican and as a conservative, that we don't know how to take advantage of what has clearly become a strong Republican majority in this state. I mean, we went from being a battleground purplish state, sometimes red, sometimes blue, to being pretty reliably red. And the idea that Democrats can cross over into to the Republican side to pull a Republican ballot in the primary to dilute our conservative majority, it's just nonsensical to me. I watch these things happen and I think, we're a strong majority in the state. I think virtually every election shows that, from the presidential elections to the statewide races to the obviously General Assembly, on both chambers, then the House and the Senate. We're very, very conservative. Republicans need to decide who their representation is going to be to represent that overwhelming majority. We don't need to have the minority party sticking their noses in and messing up the process. You know this better than anybody, because I truly believe that it cost you the opportunity to become the governor in 2022, Jim. The fact that Democrats come over, and I know it happens on both sides. You've been very clear about that. So have I. I'm not justifying it saying that Republicans should go in and mess up Democrat primaries, and decide who their candidates are going to be any more than the other way around. But in our state, it is particularly galling, given the fact that we really, really kind of have become a strong, conservative state.
Well, Bob, the argument, though, is, and I disagree with this, but the argument is, well, we're going to hold back independents from helping decide who our elected officials are. And I hear that from Republicans all the time. You're going to stop good independents from voting. They want to be involved. I keep telling people, and I think you would agree with this, if independents want to be part of the Republican Party, join the Republican Party.
Agreed. And if an independent wants to be a Democrat and have a say in the Democrat Party, then go ahead and do that as well, or in their elections and in their choices. I agree. But to me, we are a two-party system. Now, a lot of people don't like that. I'll be honest with you, I don't necessarily think it has to always be this way. Sometimes I'm longing for a third party. But until there is a third party option, or rather, maybe these independents should make the third party option happen. If they are independent and do not want to identify themselves as a Republican, then stop pretending or only coming in, during a primary setting. Work in between the election periods to create that third party. If you want to be an independent and create a libertarian or a green or support one of those parties, then go ahead and do that. But to me, if you want to have a say in who the Republican representative should be in a given general election race, then you should be a Republican. And if you don't want to declare yourself as such, then you ought to sit it out until there's a general election and then make your decision at that point.
Well, it's interesting you said that, because that's exactly what I've said all along. You never lose your right. You can vote in the general election. The only problem is you jump around and you interfere with the Republican Party by making the decision to jump in on this race, maybe jump out on the next race, maybe become a Democrat. I mean, all of this can be changed if we just have people register in advance as a Republican or as a Democrat. And if they want to stay an independent, they can stay an independent. Just don't get involved in the primaries and make decisions for who represents us. Bob, and I would add this, and I want to hear your comments. It is really one of the reasons why conservatives get blocked out in many cases. I have heard that from establishment Republicans who say, well, Renacci, what you really want to do is you want to make sure that conservatives get elected versus allowing anybody to get elected. The truth of it is, I just want Republicans to get elected. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm more in that former camp. I want conservatives to be elected. It just so happens that the conservatives are all Republicans. So I think we're in the same boat here, and I think we want the same things. I do see a big difference between a deep blood red conservative and a very light shade of red rhino Republican, and I don't like that. I like to have the conservative mantra be the mantra of the party. And the bottom line is, I don't want non-conservative Republicans deciding on Republican primaries. In Republican primaries. I want you, if you are a true believer in what the party stands for, and I believe that's what conservatism stands for, have a say. Register as a Republican and come on in and help us pick the right candidate to go against the Democrats, the right person to do the job and to protect, the Constitution of this state and all of our rights and, that they're responsible for. But if you don't truly believe those things enough to declare yourself a Republican, I don't hate you. I don't think any less of you. You have a different point of view. That's fine. Stay in the middle as an independent, neutral, centrist, moderate, whatever you want to call yourself, and then have your say in the general election. But until you can say, I believe in this, that the Republican Party stands for, that conservatives stand for, until you can say that enough to put your name on the dotted line and register as such, then you really shouldn't have a say in what goes on in our party primaries. I just think that's common sense.
Well, the good thing, Bob, is we do have a couple bills out there. House Bill 208, House Bill 210. We have a Senate bill also that require actually registering in advance. One of the House bills, you have to register 30 days in advance. The other one, you have to register by December 31st. Very similar to some of the states already out there. Kentucky, you have to register by December 31st. Believe it or not, Pennsylvania is a closed primary state. You have to register 30 days in advance. I have a Democrat friend who works the polls over there, who just in their primary had to turn people away who were trying to take Republican ballots because they wanted to get involved in a Republican primary, and they were Democrats, and they turned them away. Very similar to what we should be doing here in Ohio.
Absolutely, we should. I mean, I'm tired, quite frankly, of having, it's one thing you were talking about the independents, and so was I, but I mean, it's really when the Democrats will come over and pull a ballot because they don't have to be, a declared or a registered Republican. They're the ones that really bother me, and they have made this known. We have seen op-eds in papers in which they say, hey, Democrats, there's not much for us to decide on our side. Go pull a Republican ballot because we can probably tolerate a Matt Dolan more than we can, say, a J.D. Vance in the Senate. So go vote for Dolan in the Republican primary. Go vote for, DeWine, because we would rather deal with DeWine as Democrats. We'd rather deal with him as the governor than a Jim Renacci. It literally is just taking the true, Democrats love to talk about the death of democracy. To me, that kills democracy. When the parties can't even be free to choose their own candidates, their own nominees for these very important general election races, that's denying them the real right to their vote. That's a problem.
Well, so true. And again, I'm hoping people will, as I travel the state, and I've been back traveling the state talking about closed primaries, I'm hoping people get involved. They push their legislators. Of course, we're not getting much done in Columbus right now with a fight between the Senate president and the House Speaker. We're not getting a lot of substantive legislation passed, but I'm hoping that Republicans can push this so we get something passed and get one of these bills passed. But we're going to keep talking about it, and I appreciate your comments today. let's change gears a little bit. It's interesting. I've talked about this time and time again. We are one of the most corrupt states in the country, and that's not me saying that. That is the Chicago Tribune has ranked Ohio as one of the most corrupt states in the country. We have House Bill 6, the bribery scandal with First Energy. But it's not just that. We have corruption in the council up in Toledo. We had corruption in the council in Cincinnati. We had corruption up in Cleveland. So this has been going on for years. But the really interesting one is the bribery case in House Bill 6, because one of the things that's starting to come to light is, and we're starting to see that, we now have the head of the Republican Party who is serving prison. We have the former Speaker of the House serving prison time because of this First Energy bribery scandal. But what's interesting is now you're starting to see that there was a lot of back and forth between Husted and DeWine asking for money. Governor DeWine saying, well, he didn't really know about the $500,000. Now we're seeing text messages where Governor DeWine was actually asking for the $500,000 because he was concerned about the election and the race. So again, we see this at the highest level. One of the things I've been saying, and I just want your take on it, if the guy who hands out the money is being indicted, should the guy who receives the money also be possibly indicted? Or, how can this just be one-sided? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, if there's a giver, there has to be a taker, or else nothing happens. And if it's illegal for one to give, then it should be illegal for one who is asking for that as well. I mean, I'd like to say I'm surprised and that I'm shocked to learn these things and to see those text messages that have come up in recent days, but I'm not. I mean, I think I would like to believe that my party is pure, that my party and the people that identify themselves or recognize themselves as conservatives, the conservative Republicans, it's only the Democrats who do those bad things. But, the old adage of absolute power corrupting, absolutely. There are some people who are addicted to power and they will do anything, even conservatives, even Republicans. Not that I call Mike DeWine, quite frankly, or John Husted much of conservatives, but they're Republicans. And sometimes, that addiction to power really, really takes hold, and they do things that are illegal and that are untoward and unethical. And quite frankly, yeah, I think there ought to be punishment. If we want to clean up politics, Jim, we have to clean up all politics, not just Democrat scandals. We have to make sure that we are cleaning our own house and make sure that we are holding people accountable. And if Mike DeWine and John Husted are asking for $500,000 from First Energy, especially in the wake of everything that just happened, with First Energy and involving, the former speaker, well, guess what? Then we have to clean that out. The only way we can call ourselves the party of ethics, the party of morality, the party of constitutionalism is to make sure that we ourselves are clean of all of those things.
Well, again, it's just not the 500,000. Remember, now they're saying there was almost 5 million given to the DeWine Husted camp. And let's face it, you said this, it's not just Republicans. Richard Cordray was the Attorney General. He was actually pay for play, one of the best at pay for play. Governor DeWine was Attorney General DeWine. He also followed the Richard Cordray method, which was if you want a contract with the Attorney General's office, you're going to give donations to the Attorney General, either through county parties or whatever. So we saw this Democrat side, Republican side. The problem is nobody wants to fix it. In 2018, when I first ran for governor, I said, we are a pay-for-play state and we need to fix this. The sad thing is everybody knows it. Our legislature knows it. Our legislature is a supermajority Republican legislature. I'm glad to see they're starting to look at it. Some of the members who are leaving after this term are starting to talk about it. But I got to tell you, it's been way past due. This should have been corrected a long time ago. And it's sad to see that the majority party has not really stepped up to try and fix it.
Why do you think it is that it's the members who are leaving who are the ones who are finally starting to address this? I mean, that that kind of tells you all you need to know as far as I'm concerned. They're more concerned about their own political careers and their own political futures and make sure they protect themselves. And it's only when they're termed out or they're leaving by their own volition that they suddenly start paying attention to these things and we better look into this or that. To me, that's the very nature and the very definition of corruption. And as much as, like I said before, I would like to think that corruption only lives on the left, because it does. It lives there. It also lives, in the Republican Party as well in some cases. So you're right to call out a Richard Cordray. You're right to call out anybody and everybody who has ever said that if you want to have access, you have to pay, and whether it's First Energy or anybody else. And you're right about it. I think it was 4.3 million or something, almost 5 million total. But that 500,000 being asked for specifically in the text messages is awfully damning.
Yeah, the interesting about the 500,000 is they have a direct text message from Mike DeWine asking for it, which really should be concerning for all people, all taxpayers, all citizens in Ohio, and anybody who is a customer of First Energy, because they've actually paid for all of that.
Yeah, that's a great point. That is a great concern, that the rates that we're paying may be, who knows, I don't know exactly what they would be, but they may be inflated in order to for First Energy to use those funds illegally to gain access to certain politicians in Columbus. That is simply unacceptable.
Well, and I'll tell you another interesting thing, and you hate to point fingers, but look, Yost, our Attorney General Yost, is now going after the officers of First Energy and has indicted them. But at the same time, he also took a large donation from First Energy. It's interesting when you start to see, he took a large donation, and then he also stopped one of the initiatives to try and stop House Bill 6. So it is across the board. We have these issues, and I don't think we have the end of House Bill 6 and the issues that are attached to it. I think many elected officials wish it was over, but I do think it's going to continue, especially through this trial of the not the elected officials, but of course the officers of First Energy now, which is going to be an ongoing issue for the next few months.
Yeah, and I don't want to cast any aspersions on anybody, including the Attorney General. I mean, what you're saying right now is important to look into. Clearly, I don't want to say that people cannot take money or cannot, super PACs or organizations that are representing or supporting certain candidates cannot take money from corporations or organizations. I'm not saying that at all, that if you do take money, you are automatically complicit in something illegal or unethical. It could be that way, though. And when you do have a company like First Energy, which of course has done some of that stuff, giving money to other people. Yeah, you have to ask the receivers and saying, what is the connection? Did you ask for it? And was anything promised? Were any discussions even held about things that once you get into office that you might do that might benefit said donor? And to my knowledge, I don't know any of those things are happening with Dave Yost right now, but it is certainly worth looking into, because First Energy has brought the spotlight upon them, and thus anybody they're doing business or anybody that they're supporting.
Well, Bob, I'll go even one step further. I don't think it's illegal to take those donations, and I don't think it's illegal to ask for them, as long as there's not a quid pro quo in between all that. But I still am concerned if you're going to indict the people who gave it out, and some of the people who took it, like the former Speaker of the House. Why are we picking and choosing? I think you really have to take a look across the board. And I think that's really what's going to happen with this House Bill 6.
Yeah, well, and you're right. You do have to take a look across the board. And again, I'm not going to say that anybody is necessarily complicit in anything. I'm also not going to clear anybody in any kind of a broadcloth here to say that these people are guilty and these people are not. But it's certainly worth looking into. Again, what's the old adage about sunlight? It's the best disinfectant. You have to shine a light on everybody and everything and find out who is engaged in illicit activities and who is not. And like I said, I'm just going to be a little bit careful here before I start throwing too many stones. The people that deserve to have them thrown at them are the ones for which we have evidence right now. And I think that text message of asking for it by Mike DeWine certainly is evidence of that. Obviously, those who were convicted in the scandal in the first place, but I think I'll be cautious going forward from that point.
Well, we'll have to keep an eye on it and watch. Hey, Bob, this is a election year. This is a presidential election year here in Ohio. We have a Senate race. We have three Supreme Court judges up. I want to hear your thoughts. I mean, here I spoke at a couple events over the last couple of weeks, and I keep telling people, we know that President Trump is not going to be campaigning in Ohio. That's a problem because in the past, we've always had, presidential participation in the state of Ohio. And when you have presidential participation, you normally get their campaigns kind of pulling Republicans. We know they're not coming here. We know the RNC's not coming. We also have an issue that, look, the NRSC is going to make a decision on where they go. Do they come to Ohio? 8 years ago, they didn't come here. They decided it was too expensive and went to other states. We could have a state that really has nobody pulling from the top nationally, and we're going to have to pull it ourselves, get the Republicans pushing and pulling together while we have Sherrod Brown actually setting up camp in 14 or 15 locations in the state, and is probably going to be the top of the ticket on his side. What are your thoughts on that? Where do you see all that going?
Well, I mean, I think Sherrod Brown, they've already given him some $15 million to spend between, March and June, I think is what he has spent already. He's been on the attack against Bernie Moreno for 3 or 4 months already. Bernie Moreno, of course, has not put a lot into it because of what you just said, as far as how much money is going to be donated by the Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee. But I'll tell you what, I'm moderately encouraged by the way things look right now. And I say moderately just in comparison to previous races. Your race 8 years ago, of course, was a little bit different when you got in very late against Sherrod Brown, and then they did not give you the money. They did not give you the support you needed to try to catch up in a hurry. Very, very different than this one. Bernie Moreno won pretty solidly in the primary, and he won very solidly in the primary. And it's a matter of how is he going to attack these last 4 months? I've heard a number of esteemed political analysts say any money spent before the 4th of July in a November general election is wasted money. Nobody's going to remember those ads. Nobody's going to remember that. If they want to spend all of that money on the Democrat side now, go right ahead. Will there be funds from the middle of the summer on until November for Bernie Moreno to spend and really get his message out there against Sherrod Brown? I think there will be. I think most people are taking for granted that President Trump is going to win here. That's why they're not going to come here and spend a lot of money. It's no longer really a battleground state, but it is in this race because Sherrod Brown has proven to be pretty much untouchable, for lack of a better way of saying it. So I think Bernie is crisscrossing the state right now. He's covering I don't even know how many miles he has put on it now. I just had him on the radio show the other day, but the ads are coming, and they're going to be coming. And the ads are going to be coming very, very quickly. And I think in huge numbers between the middle of July and November. And I think Ohio voters, I think he's down 5 points right now, which again, when you look back at some of the previous races against the incumbent Sherrod Brown, I think that's a manageable number to overcome between now and November.
Well, of course, and the one thing we cannot forget about is our Supreme Court justice seats. I mean, those were forgotten in 2018. We lost 2 of them. We lost another one in 2020. If we lose these 3 seats, we lose control of the Supreme Court. So I keep telling people all these races are important, but please don't forget about the Supreme Court races. They're just as important. If we want to make sure our state stays a conservative Republican state, we got to have Supreme Court members who are Republicans and appreciate and support Republican conservative principles.
I agree with that 100%. That is exactly what has to happen. And Jim, I really appreciate what you're doing too with this show and with all of the op-eds that you're writing. Very important information. We've got to make sure that Ohio Republicans are all rowing in the same direction. And I think making sure. I'll tell you what, some of these decisions we're seeing right now in the court make it that much more important. Underscores the importance to make sure that we don't give that control back to the Democrats. So from the top of the ticket all the way on down, these are crucial things that we have to be doing right now, and I really appreciate your part in that.
Well, Bob, I want to thank you for joining us. I truly appreciate it. Truly appreciate listening to your show. Keep up the good work and keep pushing those conservative principles on the radio. We need that, especially here in Northeast Ohio.
That's what it's all about. We'll keep it up, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, again, I want to thank you for joining and hearing this show today with Bob Frantz, talking about a lot of topics from the primary, closing the primary, to the statewide elections, and even to the first energy issues. I appreciate you listening. I look forward to seeing you as I travel the state and talk about many of these issues. Again, I want to thank you for watching. This is Jim Renacci signing off on the Buckeye War Room podcast.